Okay, why don't we start with the review? And we're going to do this as a Q&A, so no formal presentation for me, but I do have some slides here just to kind of give us some structure. Let's do lecture series by lecture series, and then we'll get all the way through and then go right back to the beginning. So there's the exam. It's on Wednesday. That's what it covers. 17 questions. I think I made this clear in the announcement. There's no choice this time. That's because there's better psychometrics if there's no choice. And they're going to be worth 2 to 3 points each. They want just a couple of sentences, short answer. That's all we want, right? Basic concepts, basic principles. Lots of materials. If you have questions after today's session, post them to the appropriate forum on the BSpace website, and you'll get a response from me by 5 o'clock tomorrow. Question? Oh, sure. Yeah, it doesn't have to be the Gutenberg Bible. Just get your points out. That's all we need. Okay, so the introductory lecture basically talked about differences between social and non-social cognition. Talked about this two-way relationship between the perceiver and the target of perception, so that the perceiver is trying to form an impression of the target, but the target's trying to manage the impression that the perceiver forms. That's basically what that was all about. Any questions on that at all? Yes? Well, remember, self-verification is this funny, variant on expectancy confirmation, where in ordinary expectancy confirmation processes, the perceiver is acting either in behavior or in cognition to confirm his expectations about the target. But the target has beliefs about himself. And what the target's trying to do is to shape the perceiver's perception. And that process is what's known as self-verification. So it's kind of there's a dynamic, what Bill Swan calls a battle of wills between the perceiver and the target. Well, is it like stereotype threat? Stereotype threat might be one aspect of that. But what happens in stereotype threat is the target kind of inadvertently behaves in such a way as to confirm the perceiver's stereotype of the target. But what really happens in impression management or in self-verification is I get some sense that you think I'm a neurotic introvert, okay? And I think I'm a neurotic extrovert, right? So now what I want to do is to make sure that you come away with the same impression of me that I have of myself. That's self-verification. Okay, that actually, yes? Well, the doctrine of situationism basically says that the person's behavior in some situation is explained by features of the situation, okay? Acting independently of the person. It's kind of like behaviorism, except in the terms of social psychology. The doctrine of interactionism says that people control the situations that in turn control their behavior, okay? So from an interactionist perspective, you create the situation to which you respond through processes like evocation, selection, behavioral manipulation, and cognitive transformation. Yes?
Is situationism and the activated actor the idea of people as robots or as automatons?
Yeah, the activated actor and situationism, is that like people as automatons? I think so. Now, I think Fisk and Taylor might complain about that characterization, but they'd be wrong. This idea of the activated actor really is that there are these cues in the environment that automatically elicit thoughts and feelings and behaviors and all of that from us. So there is a mental process between the situational cue and the target's response, but it all goes on automatically and unconsciously, and it's just one step removed from radical behaviorism. But the activated actor is one way for the situation to exert control over the actor's experiences, thoughts, and actions by automatically activating them. That's the general idea. Yes? Yeah. He really did mean that. He really did mean that. Yeah. If you go to the lecture supplements, which you don't have to do, you'll find about half a dozen or more quotes from Lewin, in which he makes really clear that the person and the environment create what he called an interdependent field. Okay. So it was never his idea that the person and the environment acted independently and separately from each other. For Lewin, the environment is the psychological environment. That is, the environment as perceived and interpreted by the individual, the meaning that the individual gives to the environment. So that's the general idea there. Yes? Lewin's was unidirectional, okay, in that he thought that this interdependent field that's created by the person and the environment in interaction caused behavior to occur. That's why the formula is B is a function of P comma E, okay? It didn't really occur to Lewin in precisely this way that behavior could in turn shape the person and change the environment. He understood that. It just didn't make its way into his formula, okay? So you can think about the doctrine of reciprocal determinism, in which P and B, P and E, E and B, did I leave anything out? I don't think so. All are simultaneously causes and effects of each other. That's implicit in Lewin's view, but he never really stated it that way. Yes? Yeah. Yeah. What Bowers did in 1973 was to remind people in his own way of what Lewin was talking about in 1939, and which people had subsequently forgotten. Now, as a historical footnote, you don't care about this, but since you brought it up, one of the really weird things about the Bauer paper is that he doesn't cite Lewin. Okay. He doesn't make any reference to Lewin at all. But I knew Ken Bowers very well. And I can tell you that that's what he had in mind. That sometimes when you write a paper, you just make a slip. And he just neglected to cite Lewin. But he always had Lewin in mind when he was doing this. I see Bowers' 73 paper as a revival of this Lewinian perspective, because what had gone on in social psychology between Lewin 1939 and Bowers 73 was that personality and social psychologists had grown apart and had begun to pursue their various topics basically independent of each other. And that's an un-Lewinian perspective on things. And Bowers, in his own way, brought our attention back to that fundamental idea. But that's a weird, difficult topic for the history of psychology, and I wouldn't expect you to talk about that too much. Let me see if there's anybody new. Anybody else? Yes?
In the doctrine of reciprocal determinism, where would effects of cognitive sociology fall?
Where would cognitive sociology fall? It wouldn't fall any place in that doctrine. And the reason for that is the doctrine of traits, doctrine of situationism, doctrine of interactionism, doctrine of reciprocal determinism, they're all at the individual level of analysis. There's an individual person in an environment who behaves. Okay? And sociology, like the other social sciences, political science, anthropology, whatever, they don't talk about the individual too much. What they're really interested in is a larger unit of analysis, the society, the culture, the organization, the institution. Now, you can expand those doctrines that I talked about to cover the group case, okay? But that's not something that's not a connection that anybody explicitly makes, okay? So, for example, line between social psychology and sociology is what's known as group relations, okay? And in the same way that you can think about individuals creating their environments, you can also think about groups creating environments. That would be the kind of thing that cognitive sociologists would talk about. And what Zerubbabel in Social Mindscapes is really trying to get us to understand is that in the same way that individuals mentally represent the world and create the world through their perceptions and interpretive processes and all that, groups do the same kind of thing. And that part of what it means to be a group member is that you see the world, you remember the past, you carve up the world the same way other members of your group do. And that's what it means cognitively to be a group member. So you can make those connections, but not so much. Why do I assign social mindscapes? Because I want this to be a less discipline-focused course. So over spring break, you're going to read a novel, right? Just kind of see how some of these themes get played out in literature. With Zerubbabel, you're looking at how cognition, social cognition, might look from the group perspective of the sociologist. Yes? The who? What is it? Oh, the Thomas theorem. The Thomas theorem basically just says that situations are real as they're perceived by the individual. That is, if a person perceives a situation to be the case, it's a perception that counts. So you can think about the Thomas theorem really being the foundation statement of the cognitive perspective in social psychology. That it's not the situation as objectively described that controls experience, thought, and action. It's the perception of the situation. It's a mental representation of the situation. The symbolic interactionists said much the same thing, using different language another 10, 15 years later, where they said, people like Mead or Bloomer said that interactions take place in the head before they take place in reality. That what's really important is what the people engaged in the interaction believe, perceive, remember, think, and so on. That's all part of the deep history of the cognitive perspective that gets revived in social psychology in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Follow up? Yeah, our perception of the situation is what matters. It doesn't matter what the situation is, objectively. What matters is what I think it is. That's the essence of the Thomas theorem. All right, in the readings, pretty much the same kind of thing. Fisk and Taylor had these models of the social thinker that I think are pretty interesting. They talk a little bit about the relationship between the individual and surrounding culture, kind of a connection to Zerubbabel, if you want. And then Zerubbabel himself kind of lays out some of the differences between what he calls cognitive psychology, but for our purposes, it's really social cognition and cognitive sociology. Yeah. I didn't mention anything about chapter 2, and I discovered that mistake over the weekend, corrected it, posted a new summary. I sent out an announcement about that. I hope everybody got that. But there's just a little paragraph. In fact, the announcement contains the paragraph about chapter 2. Chapter 2, that's some kind of Freudian slip on my part, I suppose. It used to be there, and somehow it just disappeared. But that's about dual processes in social cognition, and that's really important. I've talked a couple of times in lecture about the distinction between automatic and controlled processes, the importance of automaticity. Fisk and Taylor talk about this a lot in various ways in their chapter on stereotyping, for example, and in their chapter on memory, basically. So that's a good foundational chapter, and I'm sorry that got left out of the original, but it's there now. Okay. Thanks to whoever caught that or stimulated me to catch it. Yes. Well, I think it would be very useful to know the individual models. There are only 3, 4, 5 of them, and they kind of capture the broad swath of theoretical approaches to social cognition. So you got what is it, the rational actor and the motivated tactician and the automated, the activated actor or whatever. I mean, those are the most salient ways that theorists since the 80s have thought about social cognition. I think it provides a very good framework for thinking about the topics in the course. Yes? A consistency seeker, well, how to say this? A consistency seeker is seeking consistency. And that consistency comes in 2 kinds. If you're a Heideggerian balance theorist, you want all your beliefs and attitudes to be in balance. If I love my wife and my wife likes George Bush and I don't like George Bush, there's an inconsistency there that I got to resolve somehow. I've somehow either got to stop liking my wife so much or I got to start liking George Bush more, because what we want, we're motivated to keep our attitudes and beliefs and feelings in some sort of balance with each other. That's the essence of Heidegger's balance theory. Cognitive dissonance theory takes the same idea, except it applies to the relationship between a person's beliefs and a person's actual behavior. If I think that George Bush would have been a good president, but I voted for somebody else instead, there's a dissonance there between my beliefs and my behavior that I have to resolve somehow. Okay, and there are lots of different ways to do that, but the dissonance that's created by the contradiction between my belief and my behavior is aversive, and I've got to deal with it somehow. So they're all about consistency, either consistency between one belief and another, or one attitude and another, or consistency between one's beliefs and attitudes on the one hand and one's behavior on the other hand. It's the same idea, basically the same idea. Yes. Cognitive miser. Oh, yeah. Okay. I was going to say, geez, I thought I read that chapter. Yeah, the cognitive miser. This is a view of social cognition that comes out of the judgment and heuristics approach. Thank you. That basically says that we don't really want to think too hard about anything. We don't really want to put a lot of energy and effort and mental effort into what we're doing, so that most of our behavior just kind of comes off the top of our heads. One mechanism for that is automaticity. If we just kind of allow ourselves to be swayed by whatever's going on in the environment without thinking about it too much, that is both behaving in an automatized fashion and it's conserving mental resources. Why we're conserving them, since we're not using them, isn't completely clear to me, but that's what misers do. They hoard money, they don't spend it, and then they got nothing to do with all the money that they hoard. So it's a pretty interesting analogy. But again, the there's a very close connection between the cognitive miser approach to social cognition and the automaticity approach to social cognition. Behaving automatically is one way of conserving cognitive resources, but so is relying on judgment heuristics like representativeness and availability and simulation and all of those kinds of things. None of those things are supposed to take up too much room in your head. Yeah. Yes, heuristics might be another example of automaticity. For reasons that I don't completely understand, the heuristics, the people who promoted judgment heuristics didn't really talk too much about automaticity. The people who talked about automaticity looked at the heuristics literature and said, see, that's an example of what we're talking about, okay? The salient exception to that is the guy who's really responsible for the judgment heuristics approach to begin with, which is Daniel Kahneman. Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize in literature in economics for the discovery of judgment heuristics, has recently come out with a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, in which he postulates that our thought processes are guided by two different kinds of systems, what he calls system 1 and system 2, but which is basically automatic and controlled. And he says the automatic system 1 is very likely to rely on judgment heuristics and biases of various sorts. The more controlled system 2 is more likely to counteract those and be more rational and more deliberate about things. But both the judgment heuristics crowd and the automaticity crowd says that basically automatic heuristic thinking is the default, and that we don't typically engage in other kinds of thinking. That's the general idea there. Let me come back to the cognitive perspective later, I want to make sure we have plenty of time here. So there we are in social perception. I talked about the ecological versus the constructivist views of perception. I talked about Ash's work and notion of central traits, and then turned to the ecological view. The reason I did that is not because I believe it, because I don't so much, but because in the ecological view, you really see perception. With the Ash impression formation paradigm, people are given lists of words and sentences and stories, but the ecological view brings us face to face with the actual physical stimulus. People who are smiling, people who are looking disgusted, people who are baby-faced, people who look like they might be gay or straight or whatever. You're really looking at perception, which has to do with unpacking the physical stimulus and trying to get some meaning out of it. So even though I think the arguments for the ecological viewpoint are overstated, I do think that there is a positive benefit to the ecological view in that it really forces us to get beyond language and look at the physical stimulus. So Fisk and Taylor don't really talk about social perception in that way, but they do kind of in their chapter on attention and encoding. And also, this is a good opportunity for you to read their chapters on attitudes. So there we are. Yeah. Yeah, balance theory. I thought I did that up here, but again, balance theory says that your attitudes, your beliefs, ought to be consistent with each other. Balance theory and dissonance theory are both consistency theories, and that what we want is for our beliefs and attitudes and values to comprise a coherent package that minimizes internal inconsistencies. So in Heider's balance theory, the idea is that we want to bring our attitudes in line with each other so you don't have contradictory attitudes. Okay? Dissonance is very much like that, except what dissonance talks about is contradictions between a person's beliefs and a person's behavior, not between one person's beliefs and some other beliefs that the person has. But it's the same idea, that we're consistency seekers, we want everything to hang together, we don't want any contradictions, we don't want any conflict, everything copacetic, as they used to say in the 50s. Let me take a question back here. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I talked about that in response to a question on the queries and comments this morning. So if what I do right now doesn't satisfy you, go there, or just ask a question again. Let me see if okay. Situational accessibility is like priming effects. You walk into a room, there's a member of some racial minority or some ethnic minority or something like that, and the presence of that person automatically elicits in you the stereotype about that group. That would be a really good example of situational accessibility. The presence of some object or event in the situation momentarily activates some pre-existing belief, attitude, stereotype, or whatever. Chronic accessibility also has to do with priming effects, but there's no situational cue. It's like an internally generated cue. The way I explained it on the forum this morning, or was it last night, it's almost like a personality trait. If I'm the kind of person who, I have a friend like this, divides the world up into 4 groups: male versus female, smart versus not smart. Those are his categories, and there are plenty of smart females in his group, so don't get me started on that, okay? But that's how he divides the world, okay? And he carries this set of preconceptions or these categories around in his head so that whenever he meets a new person, the first thing he does is to categorize that person as male or female, smart or not smart, right? Doesn't think about anything else. He doesn't think about physical attractiveness. He doesn't think about affability or friendliness or anything at all. All he cares about is that. So those constructs, male versus female, gender and smartness, intelligence, are chronically accessible to him. It's as if he walks around priming himself all the time. For that, even in the absence of a particular situational cue. Yeah. So that's the difference. Situational accessibility, you've got a momentary activation caused by the presence of some prime in the environment. Chronic accessibility, you've got a chronic, constant level of activation caused by something about your personality. Follow up? Yeah, that's a good example. Okay, so encountering somebody of another race and then automatically kind of activating the stereotype is one thing. Carrying that around in your head in the forefront of consciousness all the time is something else entirely.